Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 5, chapter entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Text 1. Arjuna Uvacha Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna Punaryogam Cha Shamsasi Yat Shreya Etayorekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam.
Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?"
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasaha Karma Yogashya Nishresyasya Karavubho Tayostu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate.
The personality of Godhead replied, "The renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work."
Dhyeyaha sanitya sannyasi yona dveshti na kakshati nirdvando hi mahabaho sukham bandhat samuchyate.
One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna.
Sankhya yogo prithak palaha pravanti na panditaha ekam apyasthita samyak ubhayor vindate phalam.
Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both.
Yat sankhye prapyate sthanam tad yogairapi gamyate ekam sankhyam cha yogam cha ya pashyati sapashyati.
One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are.
Sanyasastu mahabaho dukham aptum ayogataha yoga yukto muni brahma na chirena dhigacchati.
Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay.
Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvannapi na lipyate.
One who works in devotion, who is pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled.
Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvit pashyan shrinvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachan swapan shwasan prapalan vishrijan krihnan unmishan nimishan napi indriyanindriyartheshu vartan iti dharayan.
A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all, because while speaking, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects, and that he is aloof from them.
ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रम् इवाम्भसा.
One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as a lotus leaf is untouched by water.
कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये.
The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification.
युक्तः कर्म फलं त्यक्त्वा शान्तिम् आप्नोति नैष्ठिकीम् अयुक्तः कामकारेण फले सक्तो निबध्यते.
We can't hear you, Pramod Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
In union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled.
सर्वकर्माणि मनसा सन्न्यस्यास्ते सुखं वशी नवद्वारे पुरे देहि नैव कुर्वन्न कारयन्.
When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done.
न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते.
The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature.
नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः.
Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge.
ज्ञानेन तु तद् अज्ञानं येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषाम् आदित्यवच् ज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम्.
When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nascence is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime.
तद्बुद्धयस्तदात्मानस्तन्निष्ठास्तत्परायणः गच्छन्त्य पुनरावृत्तिं ज्ञाननिर्धूतकल्मषः.
When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation.
विद्या विनय संपन्ने ब्राह्मणि गविहस्तिनि शुनि चैव स्वपाके च पंडितः समदर्शिनः.
The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater, outcast.
इहैव तैर्जितः सर्गो येषां साम्ये स्थितं मनः निर्दोषं हि समं ब्रह्म तस्मात् ब्रह्मणि ते स्थितः.
Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman.
न प्रहृष्येत् प्रियं प्राप्य नोद्धुं द्विजित् प्राप्य च प्रियं स्थिरबुद्धिर् असम्मुद्धो ब्रह्मविद् ब्रह्मणि स्थितः.
A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence.
बाह्यस्पर्शेष्वसक्तात्मा विन्दत्यात्मनि यत् सुखं स ब्रह्मयोगयुक्तात्मा सुखम् अक्षयमश्नुते.
Such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this, realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme.
ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः.
An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses, O son of Kunti. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them.
शक्नोति हैव यः शोधुं प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणात् कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः.
Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world.
योऽन्तः सुखोऽन्तरारामस्तथान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ब्रह्मभूतोऽधिगच्छति.
One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme.
लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ऋषयः क्षीणकल्मषः छिन्नद्वैधायतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रतः.
Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme.
कामक्रोधविमुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं वर्तते विदितात्मनाम्.
Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are free, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future.
स्पर्शान् कृत्वा बहिर्बाह्यांश्चक्षुश्चैवान्तरे भ्रुवः प्राणापानो समो कृत्वा नासाभ्यन्तरचारिणौ यतेन्द्रियमनोबुद्धिर्मुनिर्मोक्षपरायणः विगतेच्छा भयक्रोधो यः सदा मुक्त एव सः.
Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence. The transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated.
भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकमहेश्वरं सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति.
A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pramod Prabhu and Vrinda Mataji. Thank you very much for reciting.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so we will continue on trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita. Today we are going to read the verse 16, chapter 5. I'll just share my screen. Just give me 1 minute. Share screen. Yep. Okay, you all can see the screen now?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Right, okay. So today we're going to read verse number 16 from chapter 5. Jnanena tu tad ajnanam yesham nashitam atmanah tesham aditya vajnanam prakashati tatparam. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Purport, does anybody want to read? Okay, so I will read it today. Those who have forgotten Krishna must certainly be bewildered, but those who are in Krishna consciousness are not bewildered at all. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvam Jnana Plavena Jnanagna Sarva Karmani and Nahi Jnanena Sadrasham. Knowledge is always highly esteemed. And what is that knowledge? Perfect knowledge is achieved when one surrenders unto Krishna, as is said in the 7th chapter, 19th verse, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. After passing through many births, when one perfect in knowledge surrenders unto Krishna, or when one attains Krishna consciousness, sorry, 1 second. Then everything is revealed to him as everything is revealed by the sun in the daytime. The living entity is bewildered in so many ways. For instance, when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience. If a living entity is God, then how can he become bewildered by nescience? Does God become bewildered by nescience? If so, then nescience or Satan is greater than God. Real knowledge can be obtained from a person who is in perfect Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and under him learn what Krishna consciousness is. For Krishna consciousness will certainly drive away all nescience, as the sun drives away darkness. Even though a person may be in full knowledge that he is not this body, but is transcendental to the body, he still may not be able to discriminate between the soul and the supersoul. However, he can know everything well if he cares to take shelter of the perfect, bona fide Krishna conscious spiritual master. One can know God and one's relationship with God only when one actually meets a representative of God. A representative of God never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God because he has knowledge of God. One has to learn the distinction between God and the living entity. Lord Krishna therefore stated in the 2nd chapter, 2.12, that every living being is individual and that the Lord also is individual. They were all individuals in the past, they are individuals at present, and they will continue to be individuals in the future, even after liberation. At night, we see everything as one in the darkness, but in day, when the sun is up, we see everything in its real identity. Identity with individuality in spiritual life is real knowledge. So that's quite a long purport and very important points. But before we start, let's recite our prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Dinamine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Thank you all of you for joining. Very interesting and very important verse and very, very wonderful purport by Srila Prabhupada. So let's see what we learn. So in fact, in this particular verse, Krishna is actually explaining the whole Krishna conscious philosophy. And what is the Krishna conscious philosophy? Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. The important point here is that in the purport, Prabhupada starts with those who have forgotten Krishna. Why does Srila Prabhupada say forgotten Krishna? Any thoughts or any comments on this? Why does Prabhupada say forgotten Krishna? Anybody? It's interesting the way Prabhupada says forgotten Krishna, because if you say this to somebody who's probably never heard of Krishna in this material life, he is going to turn around and say, forgotten Krishna? I don't even know who Krishna is. How can I forget Krishna? You know, I don't know. I've never heard of Krishna. I don't know who this is. So how can you say I've forgotten Krishna? So then the question is, but Prabhupada is saying this, that those who have forgotten Krishna. And what is the proof that each and every one of us actually know Krishna? So Mahaprabhu says, Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. He says that we are all eternally servants of Krishna. Each and every living entity. The constitutional position of a living entity is that we are servants of Krishna. So although you don't know that you're a devotee of the Lord, but you are. You have just forgotten it. We've just got amnesia. We've forgotten what what our real identity is. But this Sankirtan movement is here just to reveal our identity to us. And Mahaprabhu in his Sikshashtakam, he says, Chaito Darpana Marjanam. He's praying that by this we will be able to clean the dust of our heart and our real identity will be revealed. And in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verse 35, it said that having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion, for by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mine. We constantly say these things. We constantly say, I am not this body, I am soul. But it's very important to actually realize it. To realize it and then to act according to that realization. So we know that the body is born, it is destined to die today or tomorrow. So the body actually is not important at all. It is the soul that is important. Yes, the body is important in the sense that this body is an instrument that is given to us by the Lord. And because it is given to us by the Lord, we have to respect it, because Krishna wants to use us, this body, for his activities. So we have to respect it. But we also know that this body will perish. It will die eventually. But the soul is eternal. And thus, regardless of the condition of the material body, because the soul is eternal, then the person will not worry about this. But the problem is that because we have forgotten who we are, and this conditioned life, we are bewildered and we are constantly struggling. We're struggling because we all know that this material world is a place of miseries. Miseries are constantly being caused by either the material nature, by our own self, like by our mind, our body, or by other living entities. For example, currently we can see that it's been almost 2 years and we are not living a normal life because of the COVID. That's the material nature. Nobody had anticipated something like this happening, where the whole world is become a prisoner, where we all are prisoners in our own houses. Nobody a few years back would have thought that someday such a condition may happen. With the advancement of science and technology and everything, sometimes people feel they are infallible, but here Krishna in his way shows us. So there are miseries that is inflicted to us by the material nature. There's miseries that is inflicted to us by our own body and mind because of physical ailments, mental ailments. And then there are miseries inflicted by other living entities, like creatures, like at least in India, we have this huge problem of mosquitoes everywhere. There's like, it's impossible to have a restful sleep because the mosquitoes trouble you so much. So there's always some or the other misery. And then finally, of course, there is old age and death. But what we have to realize is that once we understand that I am not this body, then I will not be bewildered by these things. I will not be bewildered because I know that I am eternal. These things are temporary, but I am eternal. And I will also know that Krishna is protecting me. Krishna is constantly my protector, my savior. Krishna is not like these, these security agencies that we have here, which always fail for some or the other reason, isn't it? When you need them the most. Krishna is eternally protecting us. He's always there. And once we take shelter of Krishna, Krishna is fully confident that he will give us complete protection at all times, because everything emanates from Krishna. So there is nothing that he cannot control. He is the ultimate controller. And like it is said, Mare Krishna Rakhe Ke, Rakhe Krishna Mare Ke. So Krishna is the ultimate protector. Krishna, what we need to understand though is, sometimes a person may think, well, if Krishna is our eternal protector, he is eternally with us, then why is it that sometimes we face difficulties, that we have problems? Krishna is the protector of the relationship that the soul has with Krishna. He is the protector of the eternal soul, because that is the only thing that the soul has, which is eternal. All of the other things are temporary. This whole material world is temporary. So all the other relationships or all the other things that we see around is temporary. And we don't need to worry about the protection of those things as long as the soul's relation with Krishna, which is eternal, is protector. Krishna will do whatever is needed for us so that we can revive and remember this connection that we have with Krishna. He says that he is also the destroyer of the worlds. Krishna says, time I am destroyer of the worlds. He says in the Bhagavad Gita that with the exception of you, the Pandavas, all of these soldiers here on both sides are going to be slain. So yes, he is also death. So the more and more we depend on him, we will realize that every situation actually is Krishna's loving protection. That protection could come in many forms. For example, we can see from our Shastras, on this forum, we have discussed these few stories very often, so I'm sure you will all be able to remember. We've heard the story of the elephant king Gajendra. So Krishna actually protected him materially in that sense. When he was caught in the grip of the crocodile's jaws, and when Gajendra tried everything to save himself, but he couldn't, finally he just prayed to the Lord, and Krishna came there and killed the crocodiles. So Gajendra was protected. When Sudama, Krishna's friend, went to Krishna, he didn't ask for anything, but Krishna, being the Paramatma, knew everything, knew what the condition of Sudama is. He gave him great opulence. And then you see a third instance when Parikshit Maharaj, who was actually in the prime of his youth, and he was the king and so young, but he was cursed that he will die in 7 days. And he did die. So Krishna's protection comes in different ways for different personalities, because he is doing the best what is needed for that person at that time. We may not understand it. With our limited vision and limited understanding, we may not think that, we may not be able to see the bigger picture, but we have to have the faith that Krishna is the eternal well-wisher, and whatever he does is just right. We have to have that faith. Then Prabhupada in his purport says that when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience. In a lot of his lectures, Prabhupada talks about this final thing. This is the final, the rope which is used by Maya to entangle us living entities. When we think that we are God, we are one with God, or that we will become one with God. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, verse 7, chapter 7, verse 16, Prabhupada has given this very interesting purport where he's explaining this, and I'm just going to read this. He says, a living entity's unlawful desire to become one with the Lord in every respect is the root cause of the entire material manifestation. For otherwise, the Lord has no need to create such a manifestation even for his pastimes. The conditioned soul under the spell of the external energy of the Lord falsely suffers many unfortunate incidents in material life. The Lord is the predominator of the external energy Maya, whereas the living entity is predominated by the same Maya under the material condition. The false attempt of the living entity to occupy the predominating post of the Lord is the cause of his material bondage. And the conditioned soul's attempt to become one with the Lord is the last snare of Maya. So sometimes a lot of people feel that I am God, I don't need to think about anything else. There is no other, I'm God, he is God, everybody is God. So we treat everybody like God. There is no superior, there is no inferior, everybody is the same. And that, Prabhupada says, that actually is the last snare of Maya. Whereas in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is clearly saying that we all are not one. In verse 2.12, Krishna says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to exist. So that clearly shows that I am an individual, you are an individual, all of these kings are individuals. We don't become one. Liberation does not means that we become one. And in the purport also, Krishna actually refers to this particular verse. The moment we think that we are becoming one with the Lord, or that we are the Lord, or we want to become one with the Lord, that is a dangerous situation to be in. Then Prabhupada goes on to explain that how we can get the real knowledge. The real knowledge can only be obtained from a person who is in perfect Krishna consciousness. The problem is that today everybody thinks that I am intelligent, I don't need a guru, I don't need anybody else to answer the questions. But that is where our downfall is. And Prabhupada every time speaks about how it is important to get the shelter and the instructions from a spiritual master. In this particular purport, in fact, half of the purport is talking just about taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. And what does it actually do? And clearly on this, in this flow, in this diagram, you will see that once we start associating with saintly people, or we take shelter of a guru, then we get the knowledge of the Atma and the Paramatma. We understand that there is a soul and there is a super soul. What is the soul? What is the super soul? What is the difference between these two? When we get this knowledge, then the ignorance is destroyed. This ignorance that the soul and the super soul can become one, that is destroyed. And then you understand what the Supreme Lord is, who the Supreme Lord is. You understand what my relation with the Supreme Lord is, and what should I do in order to nurture this connection that I have with the Lord. And Prabhupada gives this analogy that, like how at night, when you can't see anything, everything looks like one whole big black mass. You can't see anything because it's dark. But as soon as the sun rises, then everything is revealed by the sun, by the rising sun, because of the light that the sun gives. And I've just picked up a few of the Sanskrit words and phrases from our Bhagavad Gita, just to show how important this transcendental knowledge is. So in verse 4.36, it says, Sarvam Jnana Plave Naiva. Sarvam meaning all such sinful reactions. Jnana Plavena. What it means is that by the boat of this transcendental knowledge, you can cross over this ocean of all sinful reactions. In a lot of places, Krishna is talking about knowledge. We are not talking about material knowledge, we are talking about transcendental knowledge. Understanding that, understanding who I am, what is the difference between me and the Lord, but what is also the similarities between me and the Lord, what is my connection with the Lord, and how I can revive that connection. That is the knowledge that is being spoken about in the Gita in so many different places. Then again in verse 4.37, it says, Jnanagni sarva karmani bhashma sat kurute tatha. This is 4.37. And it says, Jnana agni, Jnana, the fire of knowledge. Sarva karmani, all reactions to material activities, bhashma sat, to ashes. So by knowledge, all reactions that we have to material activities will be burnt to ashes. And then finally also it says, Nahi jnanena sadrasham. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. So understanding or this transcendental knowledge is a constant feature, is a constant term that is being used throughout in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna. And it is so important for us to then not just hear it and understand it, but also actually realize it. Realize that I am not this body, that I am this soul. And what we have to realize is, why is it so important to take shelter of a spiritual master? If a person is drowning in the ocean, no matter how much he tries, even a very good swimmer, he may be able to stay afloat for some time, but eventually he will lose energy and he will start drowning. And when you're drowning, just that one rope, one thread, one finger, one hand of somebody who is on a boat, who is safe, you're able to pull yourself up. That person is able to pull you up. Krishna consciousness is like that. Krishna consciousness is where somebody who has already realized this knowledge, who has understood who I am, who is the Lord, how do I revive this lost connection that I have with the Lord? What should I be doing in this human form of body? What is the activities that I should be performing? And somebody who is in knowledge of that can actually show us the path as well. And that is why it is so important that one should take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, somebody who has already realized these things. Not somebody who is, and Prabhupada would always say this, that it's very easy to get a cheap guru where, he may take some money and he may give you some mantras and allow you to do whatever you want. Because by that, then you're not progressing. You're going to be either stuck where you are, or in fact, you're going to fall down further. And that is why Srila Prabhupada was so strict with all the rules and regulations. When he came to the Western countries, it was not easy, to set out these rules, these four rules that we have for the Western countries. It was very, very difficult because, like Prabhupada would say, that from the time they were born, they, one would eat meat, and one would have different kinds of intoxications as you grow older. So that was part of life for them. So to ask these people to give these things up was not easy. But Prabhupada never diluted Krishna consciousness, because he wanted to give the best. One who is in Krishna consciousness, and I'm sure you all must have experienced, as soon as you come to it, you want to bring your wife and husband and children and extended family and friends, everybody into Krishna consciousness. The reason is that you start to realize how beautiful it is, and you want to obviously then share it with everybody else, and that's natural. And that is the reason why today you see that so many of us are trying to distribute this transcendental knowledge to everybody. It's not like, it's not a selfish desire in that sense, that it's not fulfilling anything for my ego. It is selfish in the sense that I want all of the entire world, every human being, to become Krishna conscious, because that is their inherent nature, which they have forgotten. So it's natural for a Vaishnava to feel like that, to feel that I want to give this knowledge, to feel that I want you also to become connected with Krishna the way I am trying to connect with Krishna. And what to speak of human beings, a Vaishnava feels this compassion for every living entity. And we have a very, very good example in our Shastras. So let's look at that. Oh, before we go there, we have this very interesting verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which says that this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, It is the perfection of knowledge. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So because this knowledge gives us the understanding of the soul, understanding of that the soul's activities in the spiritual kingdom is to give service to the Lord. And also this knowledge will destroy all our sinful activities. Thus, this knowledge is so very, very important and so sublime. And we all need to develop this knowledge with the help of reading the Bhagavad Gita. And we need to also share this knowledge with everybody. That is the true quality of a Vaishnava, where he wants to make everybody Krishna conscious. And that then leads us to this very interesting story from our Shastras, in fact, from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Charitamrita describes the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So if some of you don't know or have not heard of it, that is what the Chaitanya Charitamrita does. And in fact, Prabhupada says that every Vaishnav, every devotee, every Krishna conscious person should attempt to study the Bhagavad Gita, study the Bhagavatam, and then finally he said that the postgraduate study is the study of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a very interesting story of Shivananda Sen. Shivananda Sen was a great devotee of Mahaprabhu. And he would travel every year to Jagannath Puri to get darshan of Mahaprabhu. And he was a very well-off, very rich man. So he would also, along with him, take all other devotees who probably could not afford to, but he would see to it, he would look after them, and he would see to it that he made their journey also comfortable. Bear in mind that in those days, there were no buses and trains and whatever else. So the journey was a very arduous journey. One would have to walk for many days. You know, there would probably be boats, but otherwise it was almost, it was quite a slow and tedious journey. And Shivananda Sen took it upon himself to facilitate this journey for many, many Vaishnavas from Bengal to Jagannath Puri, where Mahaprabhu was staying. On one such journey, a dog accompanied Shivananda Sen. And being merciful and compassionate as Vaishnavas are meant to be, he also looked after the dog on the journey. And one day he saw that he actually asked one of his associates that, you know, you must feed the dog, and the associate forgot to feed the dog, and Shivananda Sen was very, very upset. And then he could not even find the dog. He didn't see him on the rest of the journey. And he was very sad about it because he didn't know where the dog had disappeared. And then when he came to Puri in front of Mahaprabhu, he saw that the dog was already present there. And in fact, Mahaprabhu was giving his own remnants to the dog and was asking the dog to chant the names of Krishna. When Shivananda Sen saw this, he was just amazed at this whole thing. And then eventually the next day, the dog had disappeared and everybody was wondering where the dog was, but the dog had actually been liberated. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport says that this is the result of Sadhu Sangha, consequent association with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and promotion back home, back to Godhead. This result is possible even for a dog by the mercy of the Vaishnava. Therefore, everyone in the human form of life should be induced to associate with devotees. By rendering a little service, even by eating prasadam, what to speak of chanting and dancing, everyone can be promoted to Vaikuntha Lok. So Prabhupada here is constantly talking about association of devotees, taking shelter of advanced devotees, you know, trying to serve devotees. If you do just a little service for devotees, Krishna is very, very pleased. Krishna is more pleased if you serve his devotees than if you serve him actually. So here, by the example of the dog, we can see that just by associating with the devotees and having some prasad, the dog was liberated. So for us, how important it is to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and to serve him, so that we can also be in this condition, which is the best condition to be in. I'm going to stop share. So a couple of points that we can take away from this particular verse is, first of all, transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge is the knowledge that I am not this body, I am this soul, I am part and parcel of Krishna, I am eternally his servant, eternally connected to him, but I have forgotten this relationship. The other thing is to never think that you can become one with God, because Krishna clearly says that we all are individuals. We were individuals in the past, we are individuals now, and we will remain individuals. Krishna says that clearly in the Bhagavad Gita 2.12. And then the final point is that we can get this transcendental knowledge only if we take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Like how the sun, takes away the darkness by giving the light, same way the spiritual master will take away the ignorance, take away the darkness of ignorance from our minds, and will give us the understanding of the soul, the super soul, our connection with the Supreme Lord, and how we can revive our connection and go back home, go back to Godhead. So I'll stop here. If there are any questions or comments or corrections, please unmute yourselves. Thank you. No questions? No comments? Okay, we have a very, very quiet audience today. I've not heard a single word from any of you.
Hare Krishna. I'll say something, Mataji.
Yes, yes, Jyoti.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a lovely class. It really, really clearly explains that we have an eternal relationship with Krishna, and we always have and we always will, but we've just forgotten it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
thank you, Mataji. It's really,
Yes.
really nice class.
Thank you so much, Jai Shri Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody
Mataji.
else? Yes,
Hare
Seema.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Actually, one question is that we just learned that we are individual and Krishna is individual. And then I have learned from Krishna consciousness that Krishna resides in everybody's heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't make a connection between these two. How is it possible?
Yeah, so what we have to remember is that Krishna expands. Again, we are looking at it from a material vision, and Prabhupada in one of his classes explains that when you take a piece of paper and you cut the piece of paper, right? So that individual piece of paper now is not there because you've cut it into small, small pieces. But with Krishna, that is not the case. Krishna is absolute, and he may expand as souls, super soul in every individual living entity, but he still remains the absolute. And this is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Abhed, which is our Mahaprabhu's philosophy, which is explained that at the same time being one and not one, like that. So Krishna can expand himself, but he can still remain as his own individual, independent, two-handed Krishna form where he's playing the flute. Because that is Krishna. He has that potency that he can do it.
Okay, thank you so much. You explained it very nicely. And your class was really nice. Very good explanations. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Namrata Mataji.
Mataji, thank you again for a wonderful class. Mataji, could you explain me the soul and the super soul within ourselves?
Mm-hmm. So in our scriptures, it is explained like this. The analogy that is given, which makes it a little easy to understand, is that like how on the branch of a tree, there are two birds. So like that, within every living entity, let's say there are these two birds. One of the bird is the soul, which is busy enjoying the fruits on the tree. He's not concerned with the other bird at all. He's just focusing and conscious on enjoying the fruits that are on the tree. And the other bird is actually just waiting for him to turn towards him, because so that other bird is the super soul, and this bird which is enjoying is the soul. So the soul and the super soul exist within each and every living entity, whether it be an ant or a worm or an elephant or the human being. So Krishna as the super soul, Krishna as the Paramatma, is there in each and every living entity. See, Krishna can be realized in three forms, and we've spoken about this before. You know, there is Paramatma, there is Brahman, and there is Bhagavan. So in these three forms, Krishna can be realized. He is there as an expansion as the Paramatma in each and every living entity. But he is also the Bhagavan, the two-handed Bhagavan. He's got all these opulences, he's got all knowledge, all strength, all beauty. So Krishna is like that. But if you just think of this analogy as the two birds on a tree, both of these birds are there present on the same tree. But because this one bird is so absorbed and focused on enjoying the fruits, he does not care about the other bird at all. But maybe, again, you know, just extending on this analogy, that if he does not get the fruits, or if he is hungry, or if he is hurt, then he may turn to the other bird for help. And the soul the soul and super soul are like that, existing on this tree, which is the body, together. But the soul is covered. It is covered by so many millions of lifetimes. It has forgotten that the other bird also exists. It thinks it is alone, and it thinks it forgets, it thinks it is this body, because it is covered. And so we have to just clean that dust that is accumulated.
Thank you, Mataji. That was very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we've got soul is a spark. Is super soul is God. Oh, it's confusing. Yes, Surabhi Mataji, it's slightly confusing, but the more and more you read this and understand this, you will come to know what it is. So if you take the analogy again of what you're saying, soul is a spark. So let's say that you have a bonfire. You have a bonfire and a lot of sparks come out of that fire. When the spark of fire comes out and it falls at a distance, it immediately stops burning, right? The soul is like that when it has got separated from the super soul. So when this spark has got separated from the bonfire, it loses its energy. The soul is like that. It is actually part of the fire, but it has forgotten that it is part of the super soul, and that is why it is struggling in this material world. The moment the realization, the understanding comes that, why am I struggling? I'm actually part of this big fire. The spark will realize that I'm part of this big fire. Like that, when the soul realizes that I'm part and parcel of the Lord, then you will stop struggling. Does that make a little bit of sense, Surabhi Mataji?
Hare Krishna. I'm trying to understand. Sorry, it's all very confusing.
Yes. So if the super soul is
the bonfire, if it's
correct,
the soul bonfire, then how come it's inside? I mean,
so
we
yes,
have one soul, yeah, inside us, you know.
yes.
That,
So
you
what
know,
you
when
have
we
to
think deep and we, you know, think deeply, and when we are all
yes,
alone, we can really feel, you know, we are at one with our soul inside, you know.
yes, yes,
We can feel it.
yes.
But what is this super soul inside us as well?
So, you know, Surabhi Mataji, the easy way to understand this is that sometimes when we are contemplating on some actions, and, you know, and we say that, my consciousness did not allow me to do this. What do you think is that consciousness? that consciousness is somewhere deep down. Some may call it intelligence. Some may call it, my mind or emotions or whatever. But all of this is stemming from the super soul is giving you that intelligence. God is giving you that intelligence. Where is this coming from? Intelligence or consciousness, all of this consciousness is a quality of the soul. Because think about this, that let's say when a person dies, right? The material body is as is, the hands and legs and face and mind and what, apparently everything looks as is. What is it that is not there anymore? Why are we calling a particular body a dead body? What is that spark that has disappeared? So that spark is the soul, the individual soul. But that individual soul is not independent. It cannot live on its own. It is always connected to the super soul, because it is God who is controlling the activities of that soul, of that spark. If the super soul would not be with that spark, with that soul, then that spark would long be dead. Does that kind of make a little bit of sense?
Thank you so much, Pranam.
So yeah, so bear in mind that the super soul is with, and it's not just with us, like we say, it is with each and every living entity. Krishna is with all of us. And that is why sometimes, sometimes some things just come to you and you think, oh my God, I didn't think of this, or this, I've never experienced this, but suddenly why am I feeling this? Because this is the super soul, right? Okay.
Thank you so much, Pranam. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. I have a question. Regarding material activities, can we put Krishna in the middle of our material activities if our material activities are classified as our daily activities? Yes, Mataji, the thing is, what we have to realize is, and that is why Krishna consciousness does not ask you to stop any activities. You will see that none of our acharyas, our gurus, our scriptures do not ask us to stop. Arjuna was not told to stop fighting. In fact, Arjuna was asked that he must fight because that was his duty. But he must fight for the pleasure of Krishna, not for his own pleasure. So what we have to do is we have to try and understand that the results of the activities should be dedicated to Krishna. Our activities should be done in such a way that we are pleasing Krishna, and then they don't remain material, they become spiritual activities. I hope that kind of helps.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay. Then I have another question. To those who realize God through the three different ways, take three different paths in terms of what they practice, how they get liberation. Okay. So the thing is, in the third chapter, Karma Yoga, we learned a little bit about the yoga ladder, that, one can start from, say, the bottom rung of the ladder and then go up and then further go up and then further go up. So that there is a process that one can follow of realizing God in these three different ways, where one first realizes that, the God is this absolute light, or this Brahman, like the analogy that we use is sometimes of the sun, that we see the light and we say, okay, that's the sunlight coming from the sun. And then when you study further, you realize that that sun is a planet, and then when you read the scriptures, you realize that within the sun planet, there is a sun god. So these are the three stages of realization. Nothing is wrong, but if you don't come to the final stage of realization, then that is the absolute, where you realize all these three phases. You realize the light, the planet, and that there is a sun god. So same way, when you realize that, yes, God is this energy, but God is also the Paramatma, where he is in each and every living entity. And God is this individual two-handed form, where he's playing the flute and where he has all these pastimes with all of his associates. So this is the final realization. So none of these people are wrong, but like Prabhupada says, that the final understanding, the absolute understanding, is when you know that God is an individual, and that I will gain the most happiness when I form a relation with this individual and when I serve him. So they will get liberation, but different kinds of liberation. And devotees don't want all these liberations where one can go to the Vaikuntha Lok, or where one can, have like an eternal life. What we want is to be able to serve the Lord. That is what Prabhupada is teaching us. I hope that answers your question. I don't have your name over there. Surabhi Mataji, soul is covered by super soul. No, soul is not covered by super soul. Soul and super soul are together. Different entities, but they are together. When we die, what happens to the super soul? The soul travels. What does the super soul do? Right, okay. So the super soul is a constant companion. Krishna says to us that he's constantly with us. So when we die, depending on where the soul is going, that is what is our next birth going to be, whether it's going to be a demigod or an animal or a tree or whatever else it may be, the super soul will come with us. He will be with us at all times.
It will be the same one.
The super soul?
Yeah.
The super soul is Krishna.
Okay.
Krishna is one. He's just expanded. Remember that Krishna is non-different.
It's like
Krishna
a divine light.
Sorry?
Is it like a divine light with us always inside us?
In the scriptures, it is described that the super soul, the size of the super soul is given. Super soul is Krishna himself. So it is not like just a light, because like I said, the light is impersonal. You see, the light does not have a personality. Can you have a relation with the light? Will you like to feed the light? Will you want to make some prasad for the light and feed it?
No.
You can't do that, right? And that is why the next step is to realize that God or Krishna or super soul is a person. He's a person. Krishna is saying, I'm a person. So that is why we want to have a relation, because when you just think of the light, then it becomes a dry kind of thing. And over a period of time, because there is no reciprocation, there is no relationship. So one can fall back down because it is dry. Love expands only when there is a relationship, and only when there is love can actually you progress on your path to realizing who God is, who I am, and what is my relation. That is why you always have this two entities, and then there is a relationship. There is a give and take, a reciprocation.
Okay.
I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, I have a question, but
Yes.
is it okay if I send you a message?
Yes, that's fine, Chetna Mataji. And even Surabhi Mataji, if you want to just send me private messages, please, you're more than welcome to do it.
Sure, thank you. And it was a wonderful class today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, if that's all. I know sometimes these topics can be a little difficult to understand, a lot of philosophy, especially if you've just started on your journey. But trust me, the scriptures are such, they reveal themselves slowly. If you sincerely ask questions, they will reveal themselves. It takes time, so be patient, but they will reveal themselves to you. Trust me. So yeah, thank you all of you for coming today and joining this. And I hope your book distribution is going on very well. I see lovely messages. Lots of you are taking part in this, and that's really, really nice. Very inspiring, actually. Thank you very much. And all being well, I shall see you all next Wednesday. Vanchakalpatrubhascha kripa
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji, for the wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Wonderful class.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.